I remember being a small boy and listening to my mom's vinyl collection. A lot of it was gospel and CCM music from the 70s and 80s, maybe even some 60s. I remember reading the notes on the record cover, all about the different musicians and the studios in Franklin, Tennessee. And first concert I ever went to was at age 7, and it was Dallas Holm, who was one of the veterans of Christian music from the Jesus movement. And that night I knew what I wanted to do with my life. So for me, Christian music has been hugely impactful in my life. And even though I was someone who wrote Christian music basically from the age of 10, made a couple albums while I was a teenager, and then right out of high school, joined a Christian band and went on tour. Later on, I became kind of ashamed of Christian music. Mostly it was a selfish thing, right? It was more that I was afraid of what people would say of me or think of me, or that the music that I made was cheesy. And so I tried to make music that didn't sound Christian at all. And yet I was betraying a part of myself. And so for a long time, I felt even discouraged and tired out by music because I wasn't making what I wanted to make. I wasn't making what I felt passionate about. I was trying to make what other people would perceive as cool. So if you can relate, or that's you in any way, I have 4 questions for the artist embarrassed by Christian music. 4 questions you can ask yourself. So first, before we deal with those feelings about being associated with Christian music, ask yourself this question. Are you custom designed for Christian music or to be a light in the mainstream music world? Either is okay, but I want you to really be honest with yourself. Are you avoiding one or the other because of some kind of fear? Are you afraid of jumping into Christian music because you're afraid of what other people will think of you? Or are you afraid of jumping into the mainstream world because you're afraid of what people will think of you? If you're afraid of being judged by people, then you're probably not acting out of who you actually were designed to be, and you're not acting congruently and consistently with your own heart. So I would challenge you to explore that. The second question that I would encourage you to ask yourself is this. What is it specifically about Christian music that you don't want to be associated with, or you're not a fan of, or that you think other people will judge you by? Be brave enough to ask this question, because it may be something as simple as you just think the drum tones are cheesy, or you think the vocals are mixed too loud, or you think that there's too many songs in major keys, they're not dark enough, they're not emotive enough, they're too surfacey, they're too fake. It could be something like that. Or it could be that maybe you're struggling with your own faith. Maybe the closer you get to Christian music, the more it reveals the disconnect between what you do and what you actually believe. Sometimes the fear of the answer can be just as big or bigger than the fear itself. Question number 3. How can you be the change that you want to see in Christian music? What if your avoidance deprives Christian music of the very thing that you bring to the table that God would use to reshape it or reinvent the way people listen to it, or possibly deprive listeners of a changed life or an impact in their life? If your calling is Christian music and you're avoiding it, how can you be the change you want to see? And then the 4th question is, where are you now that you can begin to be the change that you want to see, instead of waiting for the whatever that is that you're waiting for? How can you be the change that you want to see now? Like wherever you are, that whole bloom where you're planted thing. I remember there was a time in my life as a young worship leader in my 20s, I was really feeling like I wanted this bigger platform, and I was leading worship at this little church of like 500 people, thinking like, man, I want to tour, I want to get out there, I want to make records, I want to put myself out into the world, I want like 1 million YouTube followers or whatever the thing is. And then I remember, and I believe God showed this to me, how can you steward 1 million people or 5 million people if you can't serve the 500 right in front of you? That question really impacted me and changed the way that I looked at that. And so I would ask you that. How can you steward and serve? If that's 1 person, if that's 10 people, if that's 100 people, if that's 10,000 people, how can you do that now? And how can you do that with a humble heart? I hope these questions are helpful for you guys. Looking forward to connecting with you. Cheers.